Okay, so this Module 5 skills test is going to involve a simulated force sensor. And you're going to use this force sensor to essentially determine the weight density of different materials. So let's go ahead and dive on in. I'm going to show you some of the controls. Now notice we got this bucket hanging from a force sensor and it's filling with water. We're going to let it fill and I'm going to explain the different controls that there's really not that many in this case. You can control the material that the bucket is filling with. So you can either choose, it's fresh water, there's sand, there's mercury, there's gasoline, maple syrup, crude oil, and back to fresh water. You can also change the location that you're doing your experiment. So again, various solar system bodies, you're essentially, for most of the activity, you're going to be staying here on Earth. The last thing is, of course, you've got a force sensor attached to this bucket. Now, first of all, notice that this bucket is an object at rest. It's not going anywhere, right? Isn't the Earth pulling on it? Again, this physics mind, and again, when you get to using force diagrams enough, you can't help but walk around and see when objects are at rest, you start thinking, well, gosh, why is that object at rest? It's probably not because there are no forces acting on it, but most likely because the forces that are acting on it are balanced somehow. And that's what's going on here with the bucket. The bucket's not moving. And yet we know the Earth is pulling on it toward the center of the Earth with a force that we call the bucket's weight. But there's something else going on. The force sensor is exerting an upward force on it that is balancing out the force, the Earth's force, in other words, the weight of the bucket. And that's what we're actually reading when we click on the force sensor. We're actually getting the weight of the bucket. Now notice when you do click on your force sensor, the number is going to vary a little bit. Don't worry about that too much. Just kind of take an average reading. Don't worry about the fluctuations. That's what's going to happen with a real life force sensor. So this simulation tries to replicate that. But anyway, let's move on to the actual activity. So in question 1, you're supposed to make sure that you're filling your bucket with water. Make sure you are on Earth, and so you can reset your thing. But the important thing is that you pause the simulation after it is filled with 250 milliliters of water, or in other words, 0.25 liters. You're going to pause it every 0.25 liters, and you're going to take a force sensor reading. And remember, I said you're going to have some fluctuations, perhaps. Don't sweat that too much. Just take an average reading, jot it down in a data table, and then most importantly, you're going to graph your data. So you use the good old quick graphing program, and again, you want to make sure that you put the right variable on the correct axis. So in this case, you're going to be putting your force sensor readings on the y-axis, and you have your volume values on the x-axis. So force sensor on the y-axis, volume on the x-axis. Volume on the x-axis, correct. You graph it, you take a screenshot, you upload it to your instructor. Terrific. Then you're going to answer a couple of questions. Now in question 4, you do the same things you just did in question 1. The difference is you're going to use sand instead. So make sure you're still on Earth, but you're going to be putting sand in there. Do the same thing. Collect data, graph data, answer a question or two. Now, in question 5, you're asked to rank your materials according to their weight density. Now, we've already talked about density in this module. Density usually is mass divided by volume. We don't know the masses of the material, we do know the weights. And so we're actually going to calculate weight density. You're going to take the weight of your material divided by its volume to get the weight density and then rank them accordingly. And then finally in question 6, it tells you to abandon Earth and go to some other possible celestial bodies and determine how much the bucket would weigh and rank how much the bucket would weigh on those other bodies. So that should pretty much take care of it. So good luck.